What's up guys, Rogue9 here, and in this video I want to take some time to fully explain how exactly Kali's new sniper rifle, the CS-RX-300, will work in terms of its damage and damage drop-off, and also how damage is dealt when multiple operators are hit due to the new target penetration mechanics for the CS-RX-300 of course, but also for all other guns. Let's jump straight in. The unthinkable has actually materialized. Players have been wondering about a bolt-action sniper rifle in Siege for quite a while now, but I for one was never expecting it to appear because of the fast-paced, close-range nature of the game. To me, the idea of a really slow-firing rifle never really made much sense because to make up for the slow fire rate, the gun would have to be super powerful, which could then easily lead to frustration when you suddenly die to one shot out of nowhere. But oh wonder of wonders, the devs seem to have actually come up with a solution that might just work out. I still think that a slow-firing gun like this will be very challenging to do well with for most players, but let's discuss that more later on. As you will probably know by now, the CS-RX, I'm gonna say Combat Sniper Rifle Extra, has a special mechanic that allows it to down any operator at any distance with a single shot even when shooting through soft walls or other operators. This is a special ability that is a completely separate mechanic layered over the top of the gun's regular damage profile because there is no way in which you could achieve this effect with regular damage modeling, right? Every operator has 100 hit points and then an additional 20 HP of down but not out health. So in theory, damage of 120 or more would mean instant death for 3-speed operators, but at 120, 1-speeds would only take 96 damage with a body shot, so they wouldn't even get downed. Getting consistent one-shot downs is impossible, and that's even without taking drop-off into account. I think that adding a one-shot down mechanic is a pretty clever solution here because it limits the frustration effect of Kali, at least you're not dying instantly to a single shot, but at the same time it makes a bolt-action weapon kind of viable. But when you don't hit the head, which is of course an instant kill, or the body, the listed damage of the gun and the behind-the-scenes damage drop-off still applies. So that's basically arm and leg shots that then overpenetrate without passing into the upper body or head of the enemy. And at this stage, before going into the damage and damage drop-off of the CS-RX-300, it might be worth interjecting some info about how the new penetration system works. A few months ago they changed the penetration to soft surfaces. This season they're adding penetration to character models, so let me recap all of this briefly before we move on. For almost 4 years of Rainbow Six Siege, guns used to be able to shoot through an unlimited number of soft walls, which meant that in theory, you could die to a single shot through 3 or 4 walls, fired randomly into a wall from halfway across the map. Well, maybe randomly, but most likely by a closet hacker who knew exactly where you were and then immediately typed into the chat, "Oh my god, what? Crazy, how, Lamau, Omega lol, WTF." Getting a super lucky kill through multiple different walls was a pretty cool thing to happen as long as you were the one pulling the trigger, but let's be fair, there would almost always be a huge dose of luck involved, and for the person on the other end, that kind of thing was just frustrating. And so, 2 seasons ago, the wall penetration system was changed so that all weapons that had been released up until then could only shoot through 2 layers of soft surfaces, i.e. 1 wall, and after that the bullet would impact the next surface but no longer go through. And of course, as before, every surface that the bullet travels through reduces its damage by 30%, but since for standard weapons that can only be up to 2 surfaces now, the multiplier will be either 0.7 or 0.49. Now, the new system of character model penetration coming with Operation Shifting Tides makes things pretty complicated when you want to sit down and calculate all of the different damage modifiers that are stacked on top of each other, but the way it's looking right now, it should actually make the game far more consistent in practice, at least for most weapon classes. Way back in the day, arms in Rainbow Six Siege used to have the same damage modifiers as legs, i.e. 0.75 for 3 speeds and 2 speeds, and 0.65 for 1 speeds. That was changed ages ago though, and arms were simply counted as part of the upper body because of the way the operators carry their weapons. You could hose down an opponent with well-aimed fire at the torso, but because of the arms being held out in front of the body, the actual damage you would do was quite arbitrary. Some of your bullets might get lucky and pass by the arms, and others might not, resulting in lower damage that had nothing to do with your aim. Changing the arms to be part of the torso hitbox definitely removed this problem, and I honestly would have been happy with this as a permanent solution, but at the same time I think the new system is really cool and introduces some fine nuances that are a definite improvement. Arms have been grouped together with the legs again with the old damage modifiers, but most weapons will now overpenetrate the limbs and strike whatever is behind, and out of all of the strike zones that they hit, it's the highest one that will count. So for example, hitting the arms and then the body will count as a direct body shot and do 1 times damage. Hitting the arms and then the head will result in a headshot, which has now been confirmed as a 50 times damage multiplier and will always mean instant death. Only if you hit the arms from the side and the rest of the body is not behind them do you get the relevant limb damage multiplier, and that all makes sense so far, I hope. Because here is where things become a little complicated. You may well have seen this graphic over the last week or so showing us the new penetration classifications for each weapon class in Siege, and as you can see there are now 3 different types of penetration. The graphic is a great starting point, but it does leave a number of questions open. Like, what does simple penetration actually mean? Do the bullets from these guns go through arms and hit whatever is behind them? What about legs? Do they work the same? And when it comes to full penetration, how many bodies are we talking about? Let's just start out at the top and work our way down, and first up is no penetration. Shotguns and machine pistols will not penetrate body parts, and that basically means no change then, because that is the way guns have always worked in Siege, right? Well, yes, but now that the 0.75 and 0.65 arm damage multipliers are back, it seems that when it comes to the shotguns and machine pistols, we're returning to the bad old days of Siege, where you could aim straight at the chest of an opponent but get almost randomly punished with lower damage because the arms got in the way. And then headshots of flashed or stunned opponents can still be blocked by the hands. I'm honestly not a fan of this. Okay, shotguns are extremely random anyway, but do we really need them to be even more unreliable because of arm shots? And if the goal here is to nerf the machine pistols, then surely there are more consistent and fairer ways of doing this rather than taking us back in time to the point where arms could almost randomly punish you even though your aim was spot on. Yeah, definitely not a fan of this. If you really want to keep these guns in a weaker category to themselves, then at least allow them to do full upper body damage to the arms. But even that is just a compromise, really. Why should we still have to put up with the old bulletproof hand in front of the face problem with these specific guns when there is a system now that helps avoid this issue? Shotguns don't get a headshot multiplier anyway, so they don't matter, and why should secondary SMGs randomly be punished with an inconsistent feature like this? In my opinion, the best thing to do is just to scrap the no penetration category altogether and upgrade these weapons to the simple penetration group. It's not really even a buff, it just means more consistency and more fairness. The simple penetration group is worth discussing as well because not all is quite what it seems in this group. My initial assumption for this group was that these guns would be able to penetrate limbs but not heads or torsos, and that's not actually how it works. I ran some tests where I shot opponents in the arms with other characters or a soft wall in behind to see if the bullet would pass through and do damage, and it does not. Simple penetration is not penetration at all really, it is more of a mechanic that adds more consistency to the damage to a single character. So if the arms or legs cover up either the head or the torso of a character, the game can recognize this and apply the relevant 1 times or 50 times damage multiplier instead of the 0.75 or 0.651. But no bullet actually passes through to do damage to objects or other characters in behind. If you shoot an opponent in the arm while it is covering their head, that's a headshot. If you shoot a character in the arm while it's covering another opponent's head, that will do 0 damage to the other character in behind. Does that make sense? It's a weird and maybe somewhat counterintuitive mechanic, but actually once you get it, it's a pretty cool solution to add more consistency to the game. You do the damage you were supposed to do to the operator you're hitting, but you won't randomly harm anyone else behind. It's gamey and unrealistic, but I like it. And finally, the DMRs, slug shotguns and sniper rifles are getting a bit of a buff under the new system, because not only will they use the simple penetration system as other guns do, but they will now also be able to overpenetrate operator models and can hit whoever is behind that. When passing through operators, the bullets lose 30% damage each time, just like when they pass through destructible surfaces. This is of course unrealistic and simplified because you would imagine that a bullet that goes through someone's hand should retain more of its energy than one that passes through a bulletproof vest, then a whole torso, then another layer of vest. But from a gameplay perspective, I like the consistency here. This system is not supposed to be realistic, it's supposed to make the damage more reliable and therefore the game simpler and fairer. So shooting through an opponent will always result in a 0.7 damage multiplier being used for each character that you pass through. That means 0.7 after the first one, then 0.49, then 0.343, then 0.2401. I ran a few tests to check what would happen if your shot first passes through the arms and then the body of a character before going on to hit another guy, and the damage reduction is still only 30% instead of 51%, so overpenetrating a single character always counts the same as one layer of drywall, no matter which or how many parts of the character you have to go through. Again, that's not how it would work in real life, but I think it's good to keep things simple and consistent in Siege. In our tests, we were able to discover that when you hit the torso, full penetration bullets will pass through up to 4 characters and then get stuck in the 5th person. In a 5-on-5 game, that's really all you want from a gameplay perspective, and considering that all of these guns, except for the new CSRX 300, can only pass through 2 layers of drywall, that's actually quite extreme, especially when you consider that most of the R6 operators are wearing some form of body armor. When you hit the arms or legs, the bullets will overpenetrate even more. In our tests, we managed to hit up to 7 characters in one shot, although that could have been down to 2 of the characters not being perfectly aligned, and so my assumption here is that with limb strikes only, you could probably hit literally all of the 9 other characters in the game. All in all, I am in favor of this mini buff for the single shot and semi-auto rifles. The weapon class is not in a bad place overall, but this will give it a bit of a unique edge and will help them compete with the full auto options just a little bit more. Still, going through up to 4 bulletproof vest wearing characters is completely unrealistic, especially when the same bullets can only pass through 2 layers of plasterboard. In fairness though, the chances of all 5 of your opponents lining up for you are very slim, so maybe it doesn't even matter. But that's finally it. Buh. This was not meant to be such a huge part of the video, but hopefully you found the insight into this rather complex system interesting nonetheless. And while the system itself is rather convoluted, I think the effect on the game will be more consistency, and that's a great thing. My summary is: scrap the no penetration tier, it just adds inconsistency for no reason. The simple penetration is great, and the full penetration tier could maybe be limited to just over penetrating 1 operator, so being able to hit 2 for all of the DMRs and maybe the shotguns, with only Glass and Kali being able to hit up to 5 enemies in one shot. But other than that, I really like the look of this new system. And now, with all of that background info out of the way, I can finally go back to discussing the damage drop-off and penetration characteristics of the CSRX. The listed damage of the rifle is 97 points, but shooting the arms or legs comes with a damage multiplier of 0.75 for 3 and 2 speeds and 0.65 for 1 speeds, and those modifiers are of course layered on top of the armor modifiers for each operator's speed and therefore result in the following close range limb damage. 3 speeds take 72 points of damage per shot, 2 speeds take 65, and 1 speeds take only 50 damage with each direct hit from the completely super rifle Extreme 300. Keep in mind though that this gun is a full penetration weapon, so the arm shots will only do this damage if you don't end up hitting the character's torso in behind. If the arms are in front of the body, that's an instant down. The damage drop-off for the CSRX is interestingly not that of the DMRs, 25 to 40 meters, but instead that of the assault rifles starting at 25 meters and bottoming out at 35 meters, where the baseline 97 damage points go down to 78 points. But of course, those are only theoretical numbers because body shots are still one-shot downs, and so the actual minimum damage can only be limb damage of 58, 52, and 40 points against each of the 3 armor types. Rook armor adds another 0.8 times multiplier, and that gives us the same damage as long-range shots without plates, and over 35 meters, the stats will be 46, 41, and 32 points of damage, but the plates will not save you from getting insta-downed with body shots, even when you're playing on double health like I usually do in my test setups. The bottom line for damage is that if you hit the head or upper body, you will kill or take down your opponent in one shot, but for limb shots you will need at least 2 or 3 shots, or if Rook is involved, even 3 to 4 shots, and that's for direct hits only. When the penetration multiplier comes into play, this number could go up significantly. Like, check this out. Shooting through 3 walls on this corner in Theme Park with this scarily powerful rifle results in literally 5 HP of damage. This means that landing the body shots is key, because to fire off the 5+1 bullets that you can carry in this rifle will take you almost 6 seconds, which gives us a fire rate of around 50 RPM. Without the one-shot down mechanic, this gun would be a literal joke. It simply wouldn't work. Reload speeds are pretty standard for high damage weapons at 3.1 seconds for a full reload and 2.5 seconds for a tactical reload. The aim down sight time is another factor that has been specifically chosen to limit the frustration that the CSRX can cause to defenders. Quickscoping with a one-shot down weapon could end up being intensely annoying to the opponents, and so the aim down sight time for this rifle has been set at a leisurely 0.5 seconds. This is slower than any other weapon class in the game right now, with the exception of shields and their 0.6 second ADS time. This makes it very hard, if not impossible, to react to sudden threats, and forces Kali players to push while aimed in with a scope that is labeled at either 5 or 12 times zoom. I tested the zoom levels for myself, by the way, to make sure that the advertised multipliers are in fact accurate, and yeah, they're relatively close. I took 3 screenshots while aiming at the same location and then blew up the hipfire image to match those of the 2 different ADS states. This gave me a measured zoom of 5.29 and 12.75 times instead of the advertised 5 and 12 times, but that's close enough, I guess. The point is that this gun has quite a bit of zoom and a pretty slow ADS time, and for most players, this will mean that pushing into opponents is going to be a challenge. Holding long angles and watching the flanks is going to be what Kali will really be good for at higher levels of play, and in more casual environments or amongst less experienced players, I can see her becoming an even more extreme version of Glaz, where she will frequently be the last surviving attacker, still sitting outside with 20 seconds left on the round timer. The CSRX 300 is a powerful but unwieldy gun that might be really useful in some niche scenarios, but in a heads-up fight, most defenders with regular SMGs or even shotguns at close range will almost always win out. The one-shot down mechanic gives the gun at least some viability, but all in all, my prediction is that Kali will just be another one of those attackers that end up with a negative win delta and will be a slight detriment to the team most of the time. But that's just my opinion. Let me know your thoughts in the poll on screen now, or leave a comment below with more details. If you enjoyed the video or learned something, feel free to leave a like, and with that, many thanks to the members of the Rogue 9 Discord server who helped me with the testing of the overpenetration mechanic, and thanks to you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next episode.
Give it, fire.